Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to have you all here. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. It's really exciting to see that all of you are connecting from all those different places, from US, Canada, and different European countries. And my name is Gosia Kuczmowska. I am connecting from Warsaw, Poland, and I am the logistics and personal specialist for the Global Leaders Program. If you haven't already, please write your name, let us know you, and also mention the country of residence in the chat box. Thank you. This is the first open enrollment webinar of the Global Leaders Program in response to COVID-19 disruptions. This is our special initiative. I would like to share briefly some information about our organization. Please give a warm welcome to our special guest, Marin Alsop. Marin, I will introduce the organization briefly, and then we'll go on and continue with the program. So, the Global Leaders Program works to prepare musical leaders to build and guide the social music initiatives of tomorrow. Our innovative 9-month executive graduate certificate combines unique on-site leadership development and diverse international settings, with remote classroom training guided by pioneering faculty from the world's top universities and think tanks, including Harvard, Duke, Georgetown, NYU, and McGill universities. Facing the COVID crisis, the Global Leaders Program has initiated a live webinar series designed to support all of us, the sidelined professionals in the music industry. And it is our greatest pleasure to be launching the series with Raising the Baton for Women Conductors, which will be a conversation between the world famous conductor, mentor, leader, and innovator Marin Alsop, who is with us, thank you, and who is the music director of the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. The conversation will be led by Deborah Wandery dos Santos. Deborah, would you please turn on your webcam now? Deborah is a Brazilian member of the GLP Advisory Council. She's experienced in the field of social entrepreneurship. She's also a violinist in Sao Paulo State Symphony Orchestra. Deborah will lead us through this conversation. Deborah, before passing the mic to you, let me prompt everyone to please write questions in the chat box that you would like to address today. At the end of this session, we will have 10 minutes of a Q&A in which we'll aim to get the questions from the chat box. All right, Deborah, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Wonderful. Please take it away. If you would like to share a bit more about yourself before getting started, please go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to thank Maestra Alsop for being here with us. We have been working together for the past 5 years in São Paulo Symphony. And Maestra, you have always been such an inspiration to me, such a very strong work ethic. And there is a kind of energy that the orchestra only gets from you. Before I joined the orchestra, I dropped everything in my life and I moved to São Paulo because I had the dream to play in São Paulo Symphony. And I just rented a little room and practiced like crazy and attended many concerts of São Paulo Symphony. And the first one was with you. And I was so impressed and so sure, yes, this is the orchestra that I want to be part of. And then I watched all the concerts with other conductors, and it's so interesting to see how the orchestra changes from conductor to conducting. And you mentioned in a few of your interviews that being a great conductor is the same as being a great leader. And that's why I think you're such a perfect fit for us in the GLP Global Leaders Program. And you have done so much through music, but that goes much beyond music. It really changes some key aspects of social problems that we are facing. I just really want to thank you. I don't want to talk about me. It's all about you today. Just thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. It's great to be here, Deborah. And I miss saudades. So I miss everybody, of course.
So this year, your role with us changed a little bit because you are now our honor conductor, and I'm so happy that your collaboration will continue with us. But I'm also very happy for you because you are now the first woman to be chief conductor of a Viennese orchestra. You are beginning your Vienna Radio Symphony Orchestra season, and it's very special because this is the 5th year anniversary of the orchestra, and they have chosen it to be a year to showcase women in classical music. And of course, you were the perfect person for the job. And I would love to hear more about you. What are your plans for showcasing the woman, and what do you think the biggest measures are for long-term impact so that after this very symbolic year finishes,
Shut up.
the work that you planted on continues?
Okay. Are you okay,
Was
Deborah?
I? Yeah.
No, you're okay. Somebody else didn't. Yep.
So would you like to talk about your plans in Vienna Radio Symphony Orchestra?
I can, it's a little bit it's a little bit strange now. Maybe we should talk under the current situation because I think it really is impacting and going to impact how our industry looks after this global pandemic eases a bit. And I find it a terrible irony that as finally the doors for women on the podium open up, and then this happens. So
Yeah.
there's a there's an unknown ahead of us, I think. And I think, there was pressure on the institutions finally to let people of color onto the podiums of the world. And it was starting to gather a momentum. But, when it becomes then a matter of life and death, all of these things go out of the window. So I'm very, very concerned that our advances, while very important, may not be sustained, and the opportunities may be smaller after this. So I have a lot of concerns. I mean, in Vienna, 5 of our 6 guest conductors this season were scheduled to be women. So of course we'll lose 2 of them at the end of the season now. But I think that that's an important statement, but it's more of an important statement that every season women are represented in these roles. And it's not just doing something because it's fashionable and a trend, because fashion always goes out of style. I like when things are intentional and that we collectively set a mandate, an aspirational goal, and more than aspirational, maybe a goal that we stick to, of having equality, certainly in the orchestra, certainly on stage in whatever way we can.
Yes, as part of your debut as chief conductor with the Vienna Radio Symphony last October, there was a symposium about women conductors, and there was a discussion about gender equality where people were collaborating to find what are the next steps so that we can possibly reach a goal in 10 years' time of 50-50 equality. Or maybe that's a more realistic talk now, that hopefully in 10 years, if we go in the right direction, we will be back to our normal concerts. Could you share with us what were some of these ideas, and from that talk, which ones do you think would be more easy to implement in this new scenario?
I think that there's something I should say that's quite interesting. I've had the experience now of being sort of the first woman in many countries and on many different continents, and I have to say that of all my experience, it's quite unexpected, but I would say that the most open and receptive country I've gone to so far has been Austria, has been Vienna. The atmosphere of and willingness, perhaps because they have a strong awareness that they've been behind in terms of equality, and that their history is not one that resonates and resounds with equal treatment. When you think about it, the first female musician wasn't allowed in the Vienna Philharmonic until 1997. That's quite recently. So they, I don't know if all of them collectively, but certainly the majority of Austrians and Viennese in particular own that fact that they have not had equality, and they're very open and ready for that. So when I arrived in Vienna, this aspirational goal of 50-50 by 2030 was something that emanated from the university there. I had nothing to do with it. It's like it was on a banner when I arrived. I said, okay, I'm good to go with that. So it was not something that I had to try to push for and to struggle with. It was something that they opened their arms and said, please come and help us achieve this goal. So in Vienna, it's actually, I'm finding it much easier than I have in any other country.
Well, you talked about being the first woman in many things. Let me just read from a list here. First to conduct Teatro alla Scala in Italia in 250 years of history in 2011. You were the first woman to conduct the last night of proms. First to be appointed to a major American, British, and South American orchestra. And the first I like the most is that you are the first artist, not only woman, but the first artist to win both the 2003 Gramophone Magazine Artist of the Year and Royal Philharmonic Society Conductor Award in the same year. That is amazing. But you said I had nothing to do with what is going on in Vienna, but I'm sure you have everything to do, because as the first woman, you are opening doors to everybody else, and even to the rest of the orchestra and maybe technicians in the orchestra. Being in such a strong leadership position, I'm sure that your very good work is just shifting the perception of people to women in leadership roles in general. And this calls to me, when I'm reading your biography and researching about your life, is that all throughout your life, you had such a consistency of high quality work. And this is something that I enjoyed very much working with you in São Paulo Symphony, because I knew that when you were coming to conduct us, I had, to take good care of my health and do everything right and be prepared, because the work was going to be on a different level. And it's very clear to me that what you do because you are an excellent conductor. And this quality that you have is opening these doors. One of the questions that the GLP cohort had was, how do you deal with this? Being a woman in a leadership role, knowing that there is so much resistance to many things that you do, but now it seems that the game's changed. Now people want to bring you to do what you used to do your whole life by yourself. Can you tell us a little bit how this experience goes?
Well, I think that there still remains a societal resistance to women in leadership roles. Otherwise, we would see much more equality throughout politics, throughout our corporate world, throughout NGOs, everywhere. So there's still some kind of pushback. I think that being a good leader, regardless of whether you're whatever your gender is about trying to enable people to be the best they can be. and get the best result from the collective group. That's my only goal always, is in the service of the music. My vehicle is the music, but depends whatever you want to do. I'm trying to create an atmosphere and give people the tools to be the best they can be, and bring their best game to the table. I don't know whether the perception of women in that leadership role has really changed. I still think people are resistant. Um, I feel that we have to be vigilant right now about creating more opportunities for women in leadership roles in every aspect of the arts. I mean, that's my field, but of course I would say in every aspect of society, because the arts is a microcosm of the broader society. And whether that's through what you're doing, Deborah, by mentoring young people, by being an example to your colleagues and your peers, or whether it's by what I'm doing, by trying to create a fellowship for women conductors, or by trying to create opportunities for young people. And I think we have to hold people's feet to the fire in terms of intentionality. It's not enough to say, oh yeah, but we had one woman this year. You have to say, okay, but what is your goal? Is it's like when they asked Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the Supreme Court, so how many women on the Supreme Court will be enough women? And, she said, well, 9 would be enough. When it's 100% female, then it's enough. I mean, how can you possibly say at least 50%, right? Then I feel it's safe. But I also feel a tremendous responsibility to other underserved people. It's not just women in these roles. It's been a sort of an old boys club for hundreds of years, and there's a secret language that we don't speak, and we have to try to move past that. And I think the key to my success really has been that for me, it's all about the end product. It's all about the music. That's my role. I'm there to serve the composer. You can disagree with me, and I don't especially care about being liked. I mean, that's taken a while to come to, but I think that's another advantage.
Yes, I wanted to ask you about this because there is a very strong article called "You Are Not There to Be Liked," quoting you. But at the same time, have worked with you for 6 years, I noticed there is a very fine line that the conductors have to walk on, being in terms with the musicians, with the board of the orchestra, with the audience. You are seen by so many different fronts, and you were always able to sustain your jobs for many years. So you have uh, tenure with Baltimore Symphony until 2021, and now you are going to start a different kind of relationship with São Paulo Symphony. So you always manage to be liked because you're doing such a good job.
But I think the interesting thing, and probably what I said in the article, is that I think if one's goal is to be liked, it's a losing battle. But my goal is to be respected. I would much rather have people respect me than like me. But of course, what happens is that when people respect you, they grow to like you, even if initially they don't, because they respect what you're doing. And that kind of like is a deep emotion. It's not this superficial, oh yeah, I think he's a great guy, she's a great gal, this kind of thing. This is something that's born out of time. And for me, my relationships with orchestras have evolved very much like my relationships with my best friends. I don't make best friends overnight. It takes a long time. It's a slow process, but it never stops once we're connected. We are we are together for life. So that's how I feel about my orchestras too, and those are the relationships that I value more.
We are on a leaders training program, and one of the most important parts is that we can build lasting relationships with our sponsors, that we can grow closer to the families and the communities that we attend. Could you please share some practical insights, some things that you have been doing that clearly have been working so that you build these long-term relationships?
And clarify a little bit more with me about what you mean about your sponsors or and this kind of thing. What do you mean?
So in the Global Leaders Program, we have outstanding musicians that want to contribute more to communities. And so they do this 1-year training program, and one of their final projects is to actually write a project that they can implement in real life. And so many different kinds of programs, ones that are similar to the Orchids in Baltimore that serve children through orchestras, other that are more similar to the Rusty musicians that work with grown-up musicians or work with children with disabilities. And so this kind of social work require the leader of this program to have sponsors that will not just write one check to them, but will actually be involved in their program, see the program grow, become part of it, and stay. Just much like you did with Mr. Taki when you met him, which is another story that I would love for you to share, because networking nowadays is the key to success. And sometimes we think about networking as being something so different and so hard. And maybe you can share a story about Mr. Taki.
Sure, but maybe I should preface it by saying that I think I think that soliciting sponsors and donors is not about asking for money, really. It's about trying to find a shared passion. It's about a one-on-one relationship. So the people that are sponsoring your project or you, they believe in you. They believe in your mission. They're underwriting the cost of something because they believe, and you've shared your commitment with them. I realized early on, because I played I had a swing band for many years, and we played a gig, a wedding gig, and the gentleman that was getting married was a Japanese businessman named Tomio Taki. And I called him up after the wedding a few weeks afterward, and I said, could I take you for a drink? I didn't know why. I liked him. I thought he was very organized about his wedding. It was like a big production, and uh, I said to him, listen, I know you don't I know you don't know me, but I need some help because I want to be a conductor, and I need someone to help me start an orchestra. And I'll do all the musical work, but I need someone to help me with the business aspect and fundraising. And this guy, he said, well, I don't really like classical music. He said, but I like you and I believe in you. I mean, he didn't really even know me. And so I'll help you. And so he helped me for 18 years. And I don't think he ever liked classical music in the end, but he would come to all the concerts, and he was a huge supporter. And when we finished the orchestra, when my career became too busy after 18 years, he said to me, well, look, we achieved our goal. Our goal was to put a woman on the podium of the world. He said, but what are you going to do about all the other women that want to do this as well? And that's what led me to found the Taki, that's his name, Mr. Taki, and Concordia was the name of my orchestra, the Taki Concordia Conducting Fellowship in 2002 for women conductors. And it's a way for me to say thank you to him for supporting me and to keep his name alive and his story around. He's still alive, he's in his 80s now. But I think that it's very important when you have a non-musical mentor like this, a sponsor, you call them, to say thank you. It's a small thing. It doesn't cost you much. And I think authenticity, being genuine about what you're doing, not being mercenary about it. And if they're no longer interested in supporting it, there's no reason not to stay in touch with them and to update them. Sometimes people's circumstances change and they can't sponsor something anymore, but stay in touch with them. Always thank them, publicly thank them. And remember that they're engaged because they care about you as a person. They care about the project, but it's a relationship. And I think if one builds connections and networks one-on-one, it's just like making friends. You know, you don't need a lot of friends, but you need some really, really, really strong friends.
Yes, this is such a big lesson because most of us that are listening to you now are musicians and we all played in weddings, but never have once talked or think about calling them and ask for their support.
Yeah. I mean, there's every place you go, there's someone to meet, right? It's true
Yes.
though, for whatever reason, and you have to remember that everybody's excited to meet you too.
I hope so.
Yeah, it's true.
So, can you tell us more about this fellowship for women conductors? And one of the questions from the global leaders was, what are the kinds of opportunities and downfalls for having a same gender opportunities or courses like this?
Well, I think that there are a few ways I want to respond to that. Uh, there were so many decades and years where the courses were only male. So, there it's not as though single gender is abnormal. It's just that women are that's not the norm. Um, I would say that there are some issues really that are important to discuss as women in the field. Uh, and there are physical issues as well because society interprets women's body language differently from the same gestures from men. So I think that's one of the issues that we talk about a lot in these all women conducting classes, this kind of thing. But I speak I speak about this as well in my classes, at Peabody, um, because it's important that the men understand this double standard that we have to contend with as well. So to give you an example, if a woman conductor does something very kind of delicate like this, the response is, she's too girly or it's too light, but if a man does that, he's sensitive. And this is simply how society interprets things. So I try to work particularly with women conductors on neutralizing their gesture so that it only means the music. There's no gender specific specific association with a gesture, that it's really only about the music. But that's very hard you have to really think about it several times in order to arrive there.
Yes, I have seen so many of your conducting master classes, and it's astonishing how much you focus on the gesture. And I see that you teach both men and women the same way, but that you being so much more aware than most about these gestures goes well for everybody, both genders. There is one question here that one of the listeners sent. Sometimes it's hard to answer people when they ask, why does it matter? What is the benefit of having more women conductors? Usually, people only cite gender equality, which is good, but does Maestra also see other benefits of having more women conductors?
Besides gender equality, you mean?
Yeah.
Is that the question, probably?
Yes, it was from Brianna Thornton.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think that having more diversity in every strata of every profession brings a broader point of view. Different points of view brings different nuance, different skills, different not that all women do one thing, or all men do one thing, or all this or that, but I do think that having more women in leadership roles brings a different kind of humanity to leadership, and a different perspective. Not that all women are sensitive and humane, of course not, but I think that diversity is, to me, synonymous with richness.
Yes. And goes well to tie to the next question from Diego Barbosa Vasquez, that he's saying from Latin American born conductors, they are also trying to break many stigmas about Latino conductors, and if you have any tips for them in order to make into the biggest orchestras in the world.
Well, I think I think there were more stigma attached to being a Latino in this field before we saw the success of Gustavo Dudamel. That sort of opened up that door a lot more. And of course, I think we can't underestimate the influence of the El Sistema program to bring awareness to the fact that Latin America is leading the way with young people in music. So I think those are good things. Of course, there's always this xenophobic stereotype, regardless of whatever country you're from, that there's a certain South American or Latino musical perspective, that's all about samba or bossa nova for the Brazilians, and that this is superficial or a lightweight. But I believe that it's okay to own that as part of one's culture, but it's your job to show them the breadth and the spectrum of what you can achieve as an artist. So, if you're guest conducting somewhere, make sure that the program is not just all sort of souvenir pieces from your country, but that you get to make a statement in the canonic repertoire that sets you apart and gives you an opportunity to shine. But I think the times are much better now than they were 15 years ago.
Maestra, you did that so well with São Paulo Symphony in the BBC Proms. If I'm not mistaken, we were the first orchestra to ever have 2 concerts in a row in the BBC Proms. I was there, it was unforgettable. And the first concert was very traditional, Prokofiev music, and the last concert was all Brazilian music with amazing arrangements. And we took a band that was specialized in playing Brazilian music and put together with São Paulo Symphony, and it was just such an amazing concert. So this is a very nice idea to all of us here who are trying to show our many faces into music. Also, regarding the theme of quality and opportunity and equality, you founded the Orchids in Baltimore, which is an outreach program where you started with 30 kids after school program, and now you have more than 2,000 kids. And this is a dream to many of our Global Leaders program to start an orchestra program. And many of them have been inspired in El Sistema. But there is a very big challenge that we are facing now, which is how do you reproduce a program that was created in a completely different environment and reality like El Sistema and spread throughout the world, maintaining its quality. And so to all of us that are involved with outreach programs, would you have any words about importance of excellence in artistry, not only human values and discipline and all of that is very good, but is there or is there not big role that quality plays in these programs?
Well, yes, I mean, of course, I think that's always the fine line to balance between social responsibility and quality and artistic quality. Um, and the more kids you reach, of course, the bigger the question becomes. That said, I want to just go back to one thing you said about reproducing a program from another country and having success somewhere else. I think you can model a program on another program, but I think each community has very, very specific needs. And I think it's important to go into the community and listen and immerse yourself, not come in and try to impose a formula onto a community, because every community has its own heartbeat, its own organism, and every community has specific needs that you won't know yet, unless, of course, if you're from the community, maybe you know. And I think our programs need to serve the people, first of all. I don't think to go into a community and say, okay, I'm here to create the highest level of artistic excellence. When people are not accustomed to classical music, or they don't have enough food to eat, there have to be certain hierarchy of parameters and priorities. So I think that what we found with orchids is that I had no idea whether the community would be receptive to the program, or resistant, or whether the kids would be responsible, or how it would go. But what became clear was that these kids could aspire to greatness without a doubt, but they had so many challenges imposed upon them by the roll of the dice, where they were born, who their parents are, what neighborhood they lived in, that these put up blockades everywhere. So the first blockade becomes, a good healthy meal every day. So then we had to partner to get a healthy meal. The second blockade becomes challenges with getting homework done. So then we partner with someone else to try to get some tutoring. And of course, getting the instruments is a challenge. Everything becomes an enormous challenge. But if you go systematically and try to address and try to let it emanate from the kids, you come to a place where the supremely talented sort of rise to the surface. So out of 2,000 kids, there probably, I think it's quite a high percentage. I would say there may be 50 super talented kids. That to me seems like a lot. And so we're trying to now create sort of like a senior academy for these kids, so that we can help push them further. But and the artistic excellence is part of everything we do, but it's not more important than getting a healthy meal, I have to say. You have to figure out what in life can be important. We're taught as musicians to strive for perfection, always push ourselves, always, but I think perfection is sometimes overrated. Sometimes enabling kids to have access to music and each other, this is life-changing for them. So sometimes it's important for us as professional musicians to step back and remember that, doing music as an amateur, which means for the love of it, is really quite a beautiful thing too.
Yes, and it's wonderful that you are serving so many kids, and that those that show talent and maybe more interest than the others have this other space where they can go and grow more as musicians. Now, one of the bigger challenges for nonprofit organizations is sustainability. And you finished your tenure with Baltimore Symphony in 2021. And I would like to know, what are the steps that you have taken to ensure the orchids' sustainability when you leave?
Well, I've been very involved in helping to identify and engage an executive director for orchids, a separate executive director, and the program has its own autonomous structure, staff, and finances. So it's completely self-sustaining. They raise their money, they're not dependent on the Baltimore Symphony, or if the Baltimore Symphony says, okay, well, Marin's gone, now we don't want to do this program anymore. They can just say, okay, we're good. And
Oh,
they might have to change the name, but other than that, they're fine. So it was very important for me. And after I leave as music director, I'm going to come back here as music director laureate. So I have a 5-year contract to do 3 weeks every year with the orchestra. And I asked please that my listing as founder of Orchids and being a board member of the Orchids program would continue. So they said yes.
yeah, amazing.
Mhm.
And Maestra, you do so many different things. In your website, I love it that if you want to know about Marin Alsop, you have to click on 4 tabs: the teacher, the conductor, the innovator, and the mentor. And one of the things that you do is to shaken up a little bit how the music, the programming of the music goes. And you do a lot of modern music. And I was wondering that the connection that has with women composers, because so few material survived from women composers of the past. And how does it go? Is this passion for new music also connected with the fact that we can now empower women so that their music can be heard?
I don't think that's where my love for new music originated. Although I don't think it's been an equal commitment to women composers and men composers, because I haven't known as many female composers as I've known male composers. But I love working with living composers because, Beethoven was once new music too. So it gives me an insight into the creative process. And I was at the Cabrillo Festival for 25 years, which is and continues to be a wonderful contemporary music festival in California. And when I went to Vienna, I realized that I had a whole new world of new music there. So, that's really feeding that my desire for new music. But, but this is also a very good moment in history for women composers. And I've been in touch with several um, in-demand women composers lately to see how they're doing. And what's great is they're all busy working on many, many commissions. So I'm happy that they're feeling good. I'm a bit disappointed because we were supposed to premiere 2 pieces by Anna Klein coming up with the Baltimore Symphony, and those were both canceled. So I'm hoping we can reschedule those. Um, but I'm so glad that finally women composers are getting some opportunity. Being a composer is even more challenging than being a conductor, because if you never hear your piece played, you can't adjust and adapt and evolve as a composer. I'm doing a lot of music, seems to be very popular right now, by an African American woman named Florence Price, who lived in the turn into the 20th century. And as you listen, she really needed to hear these pieces herself a few times, you know what I mean, so that she could adjust things and change them. You see that the lack of experience really, it becomes almost a deterrent to success. So it's very, very important that all of these women get opportunities, and get opportunities that are graduated, so that your first and only opportunity isn't to write for the New York Philharmonic, but you can try a few things steps along the way. It's the same thing with conducting. If your only chance, you have one chance, is conducting the New York Philharmonic, and that's it. And if you blow it, you're out. that just is not fair to women.
Yes, and one of the questions here is how to avoid orchestras from just booking women just to show, oh, see, we work with women, but not really making a huge difference.
What do you mean? Like, can you clarify?
I will read the question.
Say it again.
Is
Yeah.
any advice on how to avoid an orchestra having a woman guest conductor once, then saying, see, we are open to women conductors,
Okay.
but then
Yeah.
never.
I understand now. So it's like the ticking the box. Okay. Yeah. We had. Well, often that orchestras would say, oh yeah, but we have Marin, so we have the woman thing covered. I think we have to set intentional goals so that we say, okay, at least 30% of our conductors will be women. I mean, I think it should be 50%, but let's start with 30%, and then maybe 20% of underrepresented minorities, and so that it becomes 50-50. But if you don't set intentional goals and stick to them, it never really happens.
Yes. Another question is that if you recommend any courses for the woman that want to start conducting and had never had the opportunity, and how do they do a conducting role without their male colleagues thinking that she's coming on too strong? These are the questions here.
I think as far as conducting courses, there's a woman named Alice Farnham. I'm sure we could put these up also on your website so that people could access them. Farnham. She's out of the UK, and she's started a lot of courses, sort of more beginner level. Then I would say, what's interesting is that one of my Taki fellows, Lena Gonzalez, is teaming up with a colleague, a male colleague of hers, to do a conducting webinar. And I can share that information with you. You could put it up on this site for people. It's going to start tomorrow, so you might want to sign up. They have a couple hundred people already signed up. So, and these things I think will be much more available. The second part of the question is that no matter what you do, the men are going to think you're coming on too strong. So just do it.
Okay, and another question is, often female conductors receive criticism regarding their lack of authority. So the other way around. You balance those two things.
But you see, you can't, it's as though we can never win, right? Either you're too authoritative or you're not authoritative enough. So, it's interesting because when men are too authoritative, people say, oh, they're really strong. And if they're not too authoritative, they're like nice guys. There isn't this negative connotation around it. But I think the most important thing as a leader is to be yourself. If you're a soft-spoken person, you can try to speak up more, but don't change who you are. I think people want authenticity, and musicians want someone that's committed, that's prepared, capable, passionate, and committed. And that's all you have to do. When I ask orchestras, what is the number one thing you're looking for from a conductor? And I would say the first thing is always musical intention, that you have a point of view. And the second thing is eye contact, connection. And women are good at connecting. So let's go for that. Really try to be yourself and connect with people.
Yes. Maestra, we have been rethinking the formats of orchestra in the 21st century. And now more than ever, I think it's time for us to try to reinvent ourselves. And there is one question here that which advices would you have so that the young people that are trying to build musical careers could do in this time of quarantine to try to continue to grow and improve?
It's interesting because I think our industry will change dramatically. as a result of this worldwide pandemic. And I don't think it will all be for the worse. You know, I've been pushing for years for the orchestras to be more of a participant in our digital world. And there's been such resistance from unions and from this. And suddenly everybody's rushing to get online, you know, to make digital content available. I think this is a moment where you can redefine yourself, you know, whether it's a digital presence, whether it's an innovative new way of distributing content, um, all of these things. I I think because I was the only woman or one of a very small handful of women for so many years, like 3 decades, I started to look at every opportunity, and particularly an opportunity born out of crisis, as a transformative opportunity. You know, because when there's crisis, people are much more willing to suspend their rules and their beliefs. So you can emerge with a new idea, with a new approach, with a new, um, just a new viewpoint. So I would say, you know, think outside the box, try to reinvent yourselves. Music will always be important to people. Uh, whether it's, you know, creating an orchestra of amateurs online with you, you know, or teaching lessons or taking lessons or seeing what's online there, you know, rather than checking the social media, you know, about who's doing what and blah blah blah, I would say find out how you can better yourself. This is an opportunity to do that, whether it's to learn a new language, to read a new book, to learn a new piece, a new concerto. I mean, it's just great.
Maestra, so many of our students are spread all throughout the world, and you have conducted orchestras everywhere. Can you tell us a little bit more about this experience of conducting in different cultures, different countries, and also you have conducting all the way from the top orchestras in the world to children's orchestras. What are the differences between conducting amateurs, professionals, and different countries?
Well, I would say that eh, the the change from country to country can be quite dramatic. While musicians are share a lot of similarities worldwide, culturally, the experience can be very, very different. And it took me a while to understand that. And I think it's the same thing I was talking about being able to listen to the community, see what's going on, what's, you know, trying to assess. I used the first rehearsal, probably only 20 minutes, about to figure out where the orchestra is coming from, what their shared history is, what their ethos is, what their values are. Um, you know, just by listening to them play. And then I try to always build on their strengths rather than impose my will, try to see what they have that I can build on. Um, and of course, culturally, I try to be sensitive. I don't think I was always successful when I was a young person. Um, but when you go to rehearse in Germany, it's a very different experience from going to rehearse in France. You know, there's a completely different mentality from the musicians. And it's very, very important to not only understand it, but embrace it in a way so that you can get the best out of the musicians themselves. That's my experience. And then in terms of, um, you know, professionals versus amateurs and adults versus children, um, I would say that the only difference to me between professionals and amateurs, of course, besides the quality of the playing, is that the amateurs laugh a lot harder at my jokes, and I enjoy that. You know, our professionals can be a little bit jaded sometimes, and amateurs are still having fun, and so there's something very joyous about that, and I enjoy it because it puts me in touch with the reason I wanted to be a musician. And sometimes for professional musicians, you know, the day in, day out sort of grind of having to listen to somebody on that box tell them what to do can be demoralizing for them, and so their spirits are not as resilient. And working with kids, I think, I had to adjust to that because I'm quite a sarcastic person, and you know kids and sarcasm don't mix that well. You have to be, I mean, at least my experiences, and either they don't get it or they wonder what's wrong with you. So I try to be very, very direct and not need a response so much from kids. But I love working with young orchestras. I just worked most recently with the EUYO, the European Union Youth Orchestra, and they were so great. They were so engaged, and um, y- some of these young orchestras just play rings around the professionals, and they have they're not afraid to show their passion, which is what I like, and that's of course why I went to Sao Paulo, because of the passion of the orchestra.
Thank you for your answer. So we are coming to the end of the conversation, and I think that we are all very curious to know that how do you balance covering so many different jobs and doing so many different projects and with your own personal life?
Oh yeah, that's always a struggle, I think, to find that. Um, People talk about work-life balance, and uh, I don't think there is any balance. You just have to. It's a matter of trading off. So sometimes work has to take a priority. I mean, I think the people you love should always they should always be able to, excuse me for using this term, trump everything else, so that if someone needs you and someone's ill, you just drop everything. That should be a given. This is sort of my bottom line, that if my family needs me, I'm there. And I think if everyone knows that, then they can tolerate the level of work. Um, and it's nice, I have to say, while this is totally, uh, I mean, uncharted territory, this what we're going through right now. I think the idea of just pressing the pause button on the world it's very illuminating, and it's a moment to really reflect on what is important to each of us at this moment. And I hope you're all spending the time dreaming of great ways to solve all the ills of our planet, especially through music.
Yes. Well, now is the time more than ever to dream and to work towards our dream. So my last question would be, usually we have a moment where we know what we want to do. We start that dream, and usually that happens when we were children. And so many of us in the Global Leaders Program will go off to work with children. Can you please share with us what was that moment for you when you finally decided that's what I want to do in life?
Well, my parents were both professional musicians, so I had to be a musician. I had no choice in this whatsoever. But it was really for me this moment when my father took me to a young people's concert, and the um, the conductor came out and started talking to the audience and started conducting, and I said, "Oh, that's what I want to be." I was 9 years old, and that was Leonard Bernstein, and he became my teacher.
Wow, that's amazing. Marin, also, thank you so much for your participation. It was lovely to hear, and thank you for sharing your experience with us. I
My
think it went.
pleasure.
Marin, thank you very much on behalf of the Global Leaders Program. I think it was an amazing evening for all of us. Thank you for a wonderful conclusion. You gave us a lot of thoughts that we will have to think through, and I'm sure that we will spend hours doing that. Thank you so much for your presence
Thank you. Good to
and
see you,
your
Deborah.
precious time.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Deborah, thank you for helping us and leading for this conversation. Wonderful to have you with us. And I would like to invite all of you to participate in our upcoming webinar, which will take place on April 2nd at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Our guest will be Eric Booth from Juilliard School of Music, who will talk a bit about expanding the financial possibilities through teaching artistry. Thank you, everybody, so much. Have a great day, have a great evening, and see you all soon. Bye.
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 Bye.